The man who bought the island for $4 million didn't lose money because he made a bad deal. He lost money because nobody told him that buying an island is the easy part. 18 months after signing the papers, he sold it for half of what he paid, worn down by costs he never saw coming. Richard Branson faced the same wall of hidden expenses when he bought Necker Island in 1978. So did Marlon Brando when he bought Tetiaroa in the 1960s, chasing a dream that took nearly 50 years to actually become profitable. Three very different men, three very different eras, and the same brutal lesson. An island isn't a purchase. It's the beginning of a war against logistics, and most people lose that war before they even realize they're fighting it. Here's what almost nobody tells you before you buy. The price tag on the land is often the smallest number in the entire equation. Depending on location and size, a private island can cost anywhere from $200,000 for a small parcel in the Bahamas to well over $100 million for a developed retreat in French Polynesia. Branson paid roughly £180,000 for Necker back in 1978 close to $300,000 at the time. Today, that same island is worth an estimated $100 million or more. So on paper, this looks like one of the great investments in modern history. But Branson himself has said the real spending only began after he owned it. And that's the part almost every buyer underestimates, because an island isn't a house sitting on a grid. It's a blank patch of earth with none of the systems you've spent your entire life taking for granted. No water line, no power cable, no road crew, a phone call away. Every one of those systems has to be built from nothing, shipped in piece by piece, or generated on-site. A desalination plant alone, the machine that turns seawater into something you can drink, can cost anywhere from $50,000 to $500,000, depending on how much water it needs to produce. Solar panels, backup generators, underwater cabling to connect separate structures. By the time the basic infrastructure is running, many owners have already spent more than they spent on the land itself, and building on top of that infrastructure is its own kind of punishment. Every brick, every beam, every bag of cement has to travel by boat or barge, sometimes across open ocean for hundreds of miles. One storm doesn't just delay the schedule. It can strand an entire supply chain for weeks. Workers have to be flown in, housed, and fed on location because there's no local labor pool standing by. Contractors, who specialize in remote island, builds routinely charge 2 to 3 times mainland rates, simply because the logistics are so unforgiving. A home that would cost $1 million in Florida can quietly become a $4 or $5 million project once it's rebuilt on a quay with no roads. But here's the twist that changes everything. Once that infrastructure exists, the island stops being a money pit and starts becoming something else entirely, a business. Because the same owners who once treated their island as a private escape eventually discover they can rent it. High-end private islands lease for $15,000 to over $100,000 a week, depending on size and privacy. Necker Island has reportedly commanded buyout rates in that upper range when booked exclusively, though published figures vary depending on the season and source. Either way, the math is staggering. A private island can out-earn a 5-star hotel suite by the day. So, why doesn't every owner become rich overnight? Because renting an island is nothing like listing a house online. You can't hand over the keys and disappear. Guests expect a full operation. Chefs, housekeepers, boat captains, security, sometimes even a resident medic for longer stays. A fully staffed island can require 8 to 30 employees, and every one of them needs transportation, housing, and food. Most of it shipped in from the mainland. Payroll alone can consume 40 to 60% of total rental income. Picture it this way. If the island brings in $100,000 for a week-long booking, as much as $60,000 of that can disappear into staffing costs before the owner sees a single dollar of profit. And payroll isn't even the scariest number on the balance sheet. Insurance is. In hurricane-prone regions like the Caribbean, coverage can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. That's because storm damage on an island isn't a risk you're insuring against. It's an event you're simply waiting for. Docks get ripped apart, roofs get torn off, boats get destroyed, and because every repair material has to be imported all over again, rebuilding after a storm often costs triple what the same repair would cost on the mainland. One direct hurricane hit can erase years of rental profit in a single week. This is the number that quietly breaks more island owners than any other. But there's a cost here that no insurance policy can cover, and it's the one buyers almost never see coming until they're living it. Isolation, the exact thing they paid millions of dollars for, slowly turns into something heavier. A supply run that takes 20 minutes on the mainland can take an entire day by boat. A medical emergency isn't a short drive to a hospital, it's a helicopter evacuation that can cost tens of thousands of dollars if it isn't arranged in advance. Owners describe a strange emotional arc. The first few months feel like total freedom. Then, that freedom starts to feel like distance, from friends, from convenience, from the rhythm of ordinary life. Ask yourself honestly, could you handle being 3 hours from the nearest emergency room every single day for the rest of your life? Marlon Brando couldn't fully answer that question either. He bought Tetiaroa, dreaming of an eco-paradise he'd run himself. But the isolation and the cost of running it independently overwhelmed him. It took nearly 5 decades and a partnership formed after his death for Tetiaroa to finally become the profitable resort it is today. Johnny Depp bought Little Hall's Pond Koi in the Bahamas for over $3 million, and while he's occasionally rented it out at extraordinary weekly rates, by most accounts, he visits only rarely, the island sitting mostly empty between bookings. Branson is the exception, not because he avoided these problems, but because he eventually stopped treating Necker as a home and started treating it as a hotel business, with events, retreats, and full-time bookings, replacing personal use as the primary source of income. That shift is the difference between the owners who go broke and the owners who get rich. Most people buy an island as a lifestyle purchase first and think about revenue later, if they think about it at all. The owners who actually profit calculate occupancy rates before they ever sign the papers. They treat staffing, insurance, and storm recovery as fixed costs on a spreadsheet, not surprises that ambush them later. An island generating even 40% occupancy at $50,000 a week can produce over $1 million a year in revenue, but only for someone disciplined enough to run it like a hotel from day one, not someone chasing a fantasy they saw in a magazine. So does owning a private island actually make financial sense? For most people, chasing the image, no. The costs are relentless, the logistics are punishing, and the very isolation that makes it desirable is the same thing that eventually wears people down. But for the rare few who treat it as a business from the very first day, who build lean, staff smart, and market aggressively, an island can become one of the rarest assets on Earth, not because of the sand or the water, but because of what it represents. In a world where almost everything can be bought, distance from everyone else has quietly become the one luxury that still can't be manufactured.